Well, we spent a great deal of time over the last few weeks talking about an important block of voters, women. And again, in preliminary results, we see how women voters made a huge difference in this presidential election. Women helped put President Obama over the top, favoring him by 11% over Governor Romney. That's roughly the same division we saw 4 years ago when the president ran against John McCain. So what lessons can we take from 2012 about women voters? How do Republicans do a better job of winning the female vote? We have a great panel to talk about that today. Sabrina Schaeffer is executive director of the Independent Women's Forum. Wendy Biondi was an undecided voter, leaning towards Governor Romney last time we talked. We got to know Wendy after she attended the second presidential debate as a member of the audience. Wendy, it's nice to have you back with us. And Colleen Carroll Campbell was a speechwriter for President George W. Bush. She's the author of My Sisters, the Saints. It's great to have you all. Wendy, I'm going to start with you, though. Let's talk a little bit. We haven't talked in a couple weeks.
I know.
And you were undecided when we last, talked. How did you end up voting?
I voted for Romney.
And what was the main reason behind that decision?
I think it came down to three things, really. One, as I've said before, it had to do with his blueprint for the economy. I really don't think that Obama has any sort of plan for the economy. He's had his 4 years to sort of give us an idea of what he's going to do, and in my opinion, he's failed. Two, I'm a really faith-based person. I'm Catholic, and 90% of Americans are, rooted in some sort of religion. And I don't think that Obama displays any form of faith at all, and I think that that's important to me. And finally, the whole pro-choice, pro-life thing. I'm a pro-life person, and that's personally something that I found to be important when it came down to voting.
So when you talk to your friends, when you're at the playground with other moms, for example, what do you hear about Republicans? What do you think is the perception? If I was to ask you, well, listen, that's what you took away. You ended up voting for Romney. What do you think is an obstacle for the Republican Party overall?
Well, I think overall, it's hard to say what one thing is. I think Republicans are really given a bad rap, or at least conservatives. I don't necessarily consider myself a Republican. I'm more a conservative. But I think that we're just considered very straight-laced, very narrow-minded, non-charitable individuals, and I don't think that's the case at all. It's just that we want to also be given, this feeling of democracy. I think that Republicans just don't get the same democracy as Democrats do.
It's so interesting to hear from Wendy, Sabrina, because, again, undecided voter was in the debates, and it's great to get some perspective really on the ground level about how the Republican Party is viewed overall. What do you think when you hear what Wendy had to say about some of the challenges the Republican Party faced, and how would that affect you as you look to try to get out voters for conservative causes?
Well, Wendy's absolutely correct. There's no way of sugarcoating what happened on Tuesday night. One of the challenges for conservatives, and by extension Republicans, is that they shy away from playing gender politics. But that doesn't mean that you can't talk to women. And I think the real challenge moving forward is to explain to more women that conservative values, that limited government, free markets, personal responsibility is actually a good thing, that this will give you more freedom, more choice, more opportunity, and most importantly, more security,
but Sabrina,
which is what I think a lot of people don't understand.
On that, though, you mentioned, be more aggressive, the war on women, for example. We heard a lot about that. Wendy happens to be married. And so when you look at married women voted for Mitt Romney.
Right.
Single women did not, though, Sabrina. So how do you, if you're not going to engage on gender politics, how do you fight the battle of the alleged war on women if that comes back around?
Well, I think that talking to women about economics, talking to them about who pays for health care, talking to them about energy policy is not playing gender politics. It's talking to women like we talk to men, but it's recognizing that women are consumers. It's recognizing that women have unique health care needs. And it's saying to women that you would be better off with more choices and more freedom, that liberty is not a war on women. And I think that that's where Republicans, they were afraid to really come out and make a bold statement like that.
I agree. I agree. And I have to say, Jenna, I'm sorry, I cannot stand that term, war on women. I just, because you're conservative or Republican, I don't think that you have a war on women. Just because I choose to have my beliefs and I am in control of my body, that doesn't mean that I am, waging this war on women simply because I don't believe in pro-choice. I simply just don't believe that, I am the one who decides what to do with my body. Therefore, I should be responsible. Barring rape or any type of violent act, I am the one who is in control of my body, not the government. And I don't think that's a Republican or a Democratic thing. I think that's a woman
And that brings the conversation to a really interesting point, Colleen, because you've worked in the Bush administration. Is this really about Republicans talking specifically to women, or is it a broader conversation that Republicans have to have with their constituents, whoever that is, men or women?
Well, I think these are fundamental issues that impact voters of either gender, and it is important to note, as you did, that married women went pretty heavily for Mitt Romney. Also, religious women went much more heavily for Mitt Romney. But there's no ignoring the fact that Obama won unmarried women by landslide margins, and that's a demographic problem that the Republican Party has moving forward, because married people are quickly becoming a minority in this country. But I also think Republicans need to think about cultivating women leaders and women candidates from a much earlier stage. And I'm not talking about tokenism here, but we need to be thinking about this not just when the other side shows up with a woman candidate and we sort of scramble for a photo op,
so Colleen,
but cultivating from state legislature
We saw
level.
that, Colleen, though, in 2010, for example, there was this wave of really conservative women that, you know, a lot of folks caught the national media attention. Nikki Haley, for example, is a name that comes up. We saw Susanna Martinez in the Republican convention as well. But how does getting women in a higher role, if you will, in the Republican Party speak specifically to those single women voters that you say demographically is going to be a problem for the Republican Party potentially moving forward?
Well, that might be more of a cultural issue, but if Mitt Romney is only winning married women by, what, 7 percentage points, and Obama is winning unmarried women by 40 percentage points, you can see there's a huge enthusiasm gap. So if we could change the dynamics there of the married women's vote, I think that alone would make a huge difference. And I think it's important, too, to have women at the table when we're talking about messaging, and not just bringing them in at the last minute for a photo op, but really talking about how do women look at these issues, because there's a conservative case to be made, as Wendy indicated, for all sorts of issues that the Republican Party, a lot of the stands the Republican Party takes primarily on this issue of religious liberty, but we're not making that case sometimes in a language that's especially appealing to women, and that's not pandering to look at it from a woman's perspective and make that case, and you need women at the table in order to do that.
Just a quick final thought from Wendy. If you could give any advice, you say you know you're not a Republican, you think of yourself as more conservative, but what advice would you give the Republican Party during the next election cycle to get some of the women out there that decided to vote for the president?
Well, I think I have to agree not to pull women in at the last minute for a photo op. I love that statement, because it's true. I feel that we're kind of thought of in the last hour, and you're brought forward to give your opinion, and suddenly everyone's scrambling when you're not getting the results that you want. I think that if you really just consider us a part of the whole, instead of waiting until the last hour, maybe you'll hear our voices a little louder.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. I mean, this conversation we'll continue to have about the Republican Party. This is something that's happened. It's a big news item, really, over the last several days post the election. It's one conversation we look forward to continuing to have. Sabrina and Wendy and Colleen, great to have you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fox